Morning and welcome to the Bullpen, episode 27 or something like that. We got the
24.
new intro done. It was very easy. That that UFC intro actually lines up with the song beats pretty good in quite a few places. So hope everybody liked that. So don't have to stare at Kamala Harris anymore because she's old news.
She's
As
fake news. She's fake news.
she was always fake news.
She's fake news. She didn't work at McDonald's. I worked at McDonald's. I gave out more fries, cooked more fries than her because she's fake news. It's huge.
Does it feel like from Friday to now we just have a stream together, go play games, go to bed, wake up, have another stream?
Yeah, it's like wash, rinse, repeat over here.
Yeah, live, die, repeat. The
Exactly.
edge of tomorrow.
All you need is kill. That was I think the official title from the manga.
Yeah, they went with so many different names for that.
Live,
So
Die,
hope
Repeat was a
everybody's.
great name. They should have just taken and gone with it.
Well, that's what they ended up settling on after it had already been out for 2 weeks. But yeah, there's a lot that went on this week. We got the rest of the cabinet. We got Matt Gaetz just deciding to pull his name from consideration, and Pam Bondi's now in. We'll talk about that. Biden's trying to start World War III, although I don't think Biden has any say in anything.
Yeah, Biden doesn't even know that there was World War II.
Yeah,
So, I mean, what's great?
I don't know. Bo may have died in World War II.
Bo died in World War One. You know, he was over the. I know that we're here celebrating the victims of the Battle of the Bulge, but my son was there too, and when he came home and passed away, I also had a fire at my house that burned down from a lightning strike. So I know everything about you hurricane victims.
I know about losing things because I had a kitchen fire once.
Yep. But yeah, it's been a crazy week. We've had our first casualty of confirmation. And to
But
be
was
fair,
it?
yeah, he no paperwork was officially filed, but he was announced, and so he withdrew. So that's a casualty. But on the plus side, the way it went down, I don't think Trump burned any political capital yet on it because he didn't like go to the mattresses and try to make them take votes or do anything like that.
The
And his
fact that the fact that Gates says he's not going to take his seat in the next Congress tells me it may have been more of a favor to Gates. If they could have gotten him through, they would have. But what it really does is end any investigation into Gates.
yeah,
So
there's
I don't
that.
know if it was kind of you've been loyal, you know, we're gonna take care of that, blah blah blah. And I don't know what Gates is gonna do next. So
I mean, there is always the possibility of the double switch. Maybe Gates goes and takes over Truth Social as CEO, and then that frees up Nunez for a spot to do some work
possibly.
because he's a guy who knows a lot about where bodies are buried with the stuff where they went after Trump.
Yeah. He was a
So
big part of the Russia Gate stuff. But I would have liked to have seen Gates in there because I think he would have been a pit bull at the AG spot. But I don't know. What are you thinking on Pam Bondi?
I think she's the type who sails through. I mean,
Yeah,
she's a former
easily.
state attorney general. She's the concern I have with Bondi is how many of the like Rhino Decepticon type people are very pro her, but there's nothing in what she's done to make me. The fact that Lindsey Graham came out and was like within 20 minutes was like she's the greatest pick he could have made. I don't know if they're like gaslighting me to try to make me not like her, like
Right.
because I have a reflexive, like anti Lindsey Graham position on a lot of his stuff. So, but in all of her, I think she worked at like the America First Policy Institute, which was, the MAGA think tank. I know the general like people up in the New York Attorney General's office are pissed because she didn't go in with them on the anti-Trump university case that they were trying to do.
Right.
So I mean, she's been loyal to Trump. She's said all the right things. This is going to be the first time she's going to be in a position to execute his policy. She didn't work for him in the first administration, so there's no track record to speak of.
Yeah.
So
And she's coming from now deep red Florida, so
Hmm. So
I'm
yeah,
I'm interested to see what she'll do. Not
I
as
Mike,
familiar with her as I was with Gates,
yeah,
but I do remember seeing her on TV quite a bit over those years that she
yeah,
was AG.
she's the problem with her is that I compared to Gates. Gates would have gone in there and probably been like, I'm pink slipping 60% of the attorneys in this. I'm shutting down the civil rights division. I'm doing, like he would have been a flamethrower. I think Pam Bondi is going to be um kind of more of a like, I'm going to reform the institution from the inside move.
Yeah, that's not going
And
to work.
yeah, so that's why I'm a little less thrilled. But if Gates is the other line of thinking is that Gates was the sacrificial lamb to preserve Hegseth, RFK, and Tulsi.
Yeah.
Like, we've already got a see you next Tuesday out of Alaska who's committed to not voting for any Trump nominee if they don't undertake a complete FBI background check, which the
Right.
Trump transition team has said no to, because what happened last time is those background checks were immediately leaked to everywhere that wanted it, media, Democratic politicians, whatever. I mean, if you guys remember the Trump transition from 2016, that was a source of lots of negative coverage against Trump. That was how that negative coverage led to the FBI interviews where they took Flynn out from the national security advisor position.
Yep.
So I think it makes perfect sense why the Trump people are basically like F off official transition plan. So, but Murkowski is going to be a problem. Collins is a wild card. I think she'll vote for some, but not others. I could see Collins voting for RFK and Tulsi, but she's probably definitely not going to vote for Hegseth. Hegseth apparently has issues with Joni Ernst because Joni Ernst is very pro women in combat from her background, and Hegseth has those statements about not wanting women in frontline combat
In
roles.
combat roles, yeah.
But I think that's the kind of thing that can be eased in. And um, Joni Ernst is representing the great state of Iowa. And as Ann Seltzer's retirement proves, Trump has a lot of pull in Iowa. So I don't know that Joni Ernst, even if she has an issue with Hegseth, is going to try to cross her own political fortunes by going against Trump. Because what did he win by finally? Like 14 points?
Yeah, it was something 13 or 14 points easily.
Yeah, I can tell you it was more than Joni Ernst won her reelection. So,
Yes.
so I don't know that that's going to happen. But I would say Hegseth is the next person with a bullseye on his face right now from the media, the Democrats, and the rhinos that don't want to play nice with Trump.
Yeah, Hegseth is going to be the one under scrutiny. They're already trying to, do the usual against him with assault allegations.
So,
In fact,
so if
we've
here's the Reader's Digest version of that per Megan Kelly.
actually we've
Hegs.
got
Oh,
a
do we?
graphic that we can put up there that will basically explain what's going on if you want to read that out.
If I could see it. All right. She was an adult and voluntarily came to your room and was sober and stayed in your room and consensually had sex with you, you sick F. Yeah. So this is the story. This is the story as it goes per the police report. Hegseth and Jane Doe, as she's identified in the police report, were at a hotel at a like conference, some kind of conservative political action committee think tanky kind of meeting in, I think was it San Diego, someplace in
Yeah,
California. They're at the
some
bar.
conference. Yeah.
They start flirting with each other. This is verified from security camera and speaking with other witnesses. Hegseth is apparently the one who's visibly tipsy. She
She
looks,
instigated as
yeah,
well.
per the witnesses, she appeared stone cold sober. She and instigated the flirting. She, per the review of the video camera footage, was the one kind of moving him and coaxing him back to his room. Per the video camera footage, She was perfect. No, and per witnesses, no slurring of speech, no visible intoxication, no movement issues. She's kind of dragging Hegseth to the room. They go back to his room. Few hours later, like post 3 4 a.m., she returns to her room with her
Where her
husband.
husband and kid are asleep.
Yeah. She tells her husband initially that she fell asleep in Hegseth's room, woke up, and then left. Which, by the way, before Hegseth had even heard this from the police, they do an independent interview of him, and he says that's the story they came up with, so her husband wouldn't know that they took care of business. Was that
Right.
she would just go back and tell him they fell asleep. So the initial story to the husband matches exactly what Hegseth said happened, that they went back. He was a little drunk, but she wanted things. They did those things. They came up with the story that she would go back to her room and say she fell asleep.
Also, Hegseth at this point was not married. He
Yeah.
was in between his second and third wife, I think.
Now you can, I can grant you, it's definitely not a good look that he was banging a married married woman, full grown adult, capable of making her own decisions. But it's still, none of that disqualifies him from being Secretary of Defense in my position. Like whatever.
Right.
Anyway, so she goes back, and it's after she gets confronted with by her husband about these stupid stories that they try to come up with. Her truth, as they say, they're mentioning in chat,
Yeah.
was, "Oh no, I must have been drugged. I was raped, and
I
now
don't
I'm in."
remember what happened for that 3 hours.
Yeah, that was a couple days later, by the way, where that changed that to
Right.
that, and then they go and do a kit, and it's inconclusive because it's a couple days later, and all it, I believe, shows is sign of consensual activities within a certain period of time. The police look into this and basically say, in
She
official,
got caught in an affair.
yeah, they're a little nicer about it, but the police determination was basically, she, as that graphic said, she went up by on her own, consensually engaged in things, and that's how it ended. And she's just trying to cover it up. The district attorney's office has released a statement saying there's no way they felt they could prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt, which is basically district attorney language for what the police had said, which is she'd get torn apart on the stand because all the evidence, the independent witnesses all said she was a hoe for show, and she wanted to get down with Pete Hegseth because, I mean, Pete Hegseth, you've seen, one of the things they initially attacked him on was like he gets pictures
He's a
taken
playboy.
with his shirt off an awful lot, and I was like, if I worked out and looked like that, I would probably do the same thing. So,
Yeah. Was that a
forget.
40-year-old virgin reference in there?
Yes, it was.
She was a hoe for
Faux
show.
show. It's like, your problem. You need to get your bitch in check. She coming at me all wrong, man. I think that was
So
peak Seth Rogen, by the way, was 40-year-old virgin, because he's in it just enough to be funny, but not enough to be annoying.
annoying.
Yeah. So
Yep.
yeah. So
I mean,
Hegseth, I think Hegseth survives though, because on the different Gaetz had gone after, he's been in Congress going after these senators for years, and the senators like to think of themselves as above it all and an old boy, like, and the
we're
most
elected for
deliberative.
6
Yeah.
years.
And so they had a hair up their butt about Gaetz. And by the way, Gaetz, the Republican establishment still like really hates Gaetz because of McCarthy
Yeah,
and his role in
that was
removing McCarthy.
probably more his downfall than anything else, is how he forced out McCarthy, which sure, I didn't like McCarthy either. The thing was, it he didn't have a plan for replacing McCarthy, and I mean they went about it in a dumb way, I think.
Yeah, and that's the like we have to be, you have to be cognizant. We have right now what, a 2-seat majority.
Yeah.
In that kind of thing, you can't just, this isn't Newt Gingrich having like 20 seats, where if a couple like rhino wishy-washy people are off, he can be like, F off, we can do what we want, voice vote, we're doing it. This is a 2-seat majority, so he's got to keep everybody in lockstep. So McCarthy, yeah, they were like, McCarthy makes deals with the Democrats sometime. I was like, well, if all of you guys would just come up with a thing and back him, he wouldn't have to. But you guys don't do that. So it's the and what happened when Johnson got in?
Nothing,
He
because we
it
don't
nothing
have
really
enough seats to
changed.
actually
Yeah.
do anything, and the Senate was never going to go along with anything that the House was going to do anyway. I mean,
Yeah. I mean,
you
that's
were
why
your job was to be obstructionist at that point.
to Eric's point, I wanted McCarthy forced out. It's the GOP's fault for not supporting their voters.
And it could
That
have been
happened.
done, just I don't
Yeah.
think it was the right timing because it made the GOP look like, idiots running around with their hair on
It
fire.
also weakened the House majority. Like, I mean, there's a reason Nancy Pelosi was in charge for as long as she was, because she kept them in lockstep. She didn't
Yep,
lose people from her votes. So
exactly.
it's they the Republican House majority needs to just get in line with their strategy and commit to it. Hopefully, now that Trump is effectively the lead of the Republican Party and it's his agenda, there's not going to be as much of that. But that's
Yeah.
that's going to be a problem. Now back to the Senate. That's why Gaetz had lots of strikes, and the fact that Gaetz had Venmo records that would look terrible with people like interrogating him in a confirmation hearing. He got there were four people who had told him they are definitive, never gonna vote for him after he did his rounds at the Senate Hart office building. We had,
Yeah,
our
this is
our
going to answer Jaffo's question.
yeah, we had our two regulars, which are Murkowski and Maine, with
Collins.
Collins and Maine. So they were both out. We had the new senator from Utah, the one who replaced Mitt Romney. Utah, by the way, is a problem, and we need more Mike. How we got Mike Lee, but we can't get another Mike Lee, I don't know. We keep getting these wishy-washy jerks. And
Yeah.
then the last one was McConnell. And I think when McConnell basically told the team he was a definitive out, one of the things, that's four, so that's enough to get past the JD Vance tiebreaker. The
Yeah.
other part
Which then
is
it just becomes a distraction, which is
the
what
other part
Gates
is
enacts.
McConnell. When McConnell comes out and says that, he basically is telling them he'll be able to pull not probably at least three or four other people with him
Yep.
on his vote, because he's not going to make them name names or come out and face political consequences yet, but he's telling, that was a code. So Gaetz, doing the smart thing and probably in consultation with Trump's team, withdrew his nomination, and you know
He
then
withdrew the nomination,
they
and
replaced him
we
with
don't know what
Bondi.
he's going to do next because he could have taken a seat in Congress, I believe, because he won re-election and he had only resigned his current term, I
Yeah,
think.
so he could have
But
withdrew
he has
his
come out and said
resignation.
he is not going to do that. So, not exactly sure what Gates is going to do next, but like you said, maybe run Truth Social or
The
who
only
knows?
Yeah, the move to resign from Congress effectively ends the ethics investigation.
Correct.
And as we saw with George Santos, the Republicans are stupid and are perfectly willing to kick out members of their own caucus for stuff that Democrats let slide all the time. All the
Yeah.
time. So they
Some
would have.
people had a question. Will DeSantis nominate Gates to replace Rubio as
Hell
senator?
no. No,
Not
no,
a
no, no,
chance.
no. No. He's not going to do. DeSantis doesn't want to burn his credibility with that, because I'm going to be honest, Gates is popular with MAGA.
With people like
With
us that
uh,
watch
but
politics.
I would tell you that I doubt very highly he would win a statewide Florida election. Gates is kind of toxic.
He's popular in North
He's
Florida.
he's popular, like his district, which I believe is in the Panhandle,
Yeah, he's
is
in the Northern District.
like he's in the reddest of red districts. He's in like a Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene House district.
He's the same
He's
type of congressman as those. I mean, they would not win statewide.
no,
Boebert is liked in a very red area,
yeah,
and
and
she makes herself known, because she knows that she's able to be reelected in a very red area of Colorado.
I
So that's
think,
why she
yeah,
gets into all her crazy antics. So does MTG.
if Boebert ran a statewide in Colorado, she would lose by probably 15 to 18 points,
Yeah.
because even the other reddish parts of Colorado don't like Boebert.
And there's not enough red left in Colorado to really push somebody over in a state election anymore.
Yeah. So my feeling is that it's I don't know who DeSantis is going to choose. He's I mean, there's a theory that he might appoint himself if he wants to make the
I think
move.
he's going to appoint his wife.
That would be retarded.
I think that's what he's going to do.
The only way if he does that, he's going to come out and give a speech specifically that this is a placeholder so that the people can vote for someone else, that this is someone guaranteed not to run because I don't want to make the decision for Floridians. And she sure as heck better not run for re-election like that.
Well, he would at that point because
Yeah.
his term would be pretty much over at that point, I believe.
I guess
So
that is the only person he could put in there he could trust not to actually try to run to maintain their status in the Senate.
yeah, placeholder pick.
Yeah. Which is going to, with the other interesting one is going to come up with Ohio. Like
Right.
who does DeWine put in for Vance? Because if he wants to protect his own flank, he might put in Vivek. Because the only position Vivek's talked about running for in Ohio is governor, not Senate.
Right. But Vivek is already doing stuff with Doge. So
Yeah,
I don't know
but
that they're going to cross that. But
well, he
I mean,
could
you can
because
technically still do Doge and be a
yeah,
senator.
because they just assigned Marjorie Taylor Greene. She just got picked to be in Doge on
Yeah.
Doge. I don't think there's anything with Doge that has any hard and fast rules about not having people in elected office in it.
Well, it's not a real cabinet. I
Yeah,
mean, it's not a real.
it's it's
It's
a
it's
it's a
it's an
commission.
advisory
Yeah,
position at this point.
yeah. So it's I don't know. There's a lot of moving parts about who's going where. Trump keeps nominating congressmen, and I
Yeah.
understand but he's got to watch that. I mean, technically, while they're being replaced, the majority needed it actually goes down because a member of Congress goes away. So, like, instead of 218, it becomes 217 until the new member is elected.
Right. The ratio.
So it doesn't necessarily take away the Republicans' majority, but you gotta these special elections, you better have preparation. You better make sure they're in red districts. Like Stefanik, it should be they'll be able to hopefully get a Republican fairly easy because that congressional district. If you look at it, is New York gerrymanders, and they basically draw that to cover the red part of all of upstate. So
Yep.
that they're like, we'll give you one Republican so that we can get three more Democrats guaranteed. So I'm not as worried about Stefanik, but that
Yeah.
one, I
It's
mean,
just they keep pulling from Congress, from the House, and that could run them into trouble if they keep doing it. So
I see that people are
it's
saying Trump is still being advised by bad people on personnel. I don't know whether I agree with that because the the people he's putting into the jobs that they're doing, I think are trustworthy in the zones they're being given.
yeah, they may not overall align with everything, but in the in the spots he's putting them in, they kind of align with what he's wanting to do, and they will go along with what he's wanting to do. Here's the list right now for what we've got as far as all the
Does X let
appointments.
you magnify that?
I can try a little bit
All right.
there.
So perfect. Good, good, good. All right. So we've already talked about Rubio at state.
Yep,
Newer one, Scott Bessent
Scott
at
Bessent.
Treasury. I mean, the vector of attack on the right is that at some point he advised and worked with some Soros funds. I hate to break it to anybody, but anybody who worked in finance at that level is probably going to have a record where they were working with billion-dollar investors get a lot of funds working with them. So
There's a
I
lot of
don't
crossover in finance.
Yeah, and I would remind you of Mnuchin, who again worked with a lot of that kind of stuff and was very reliable in Treasury. Treasury is a fairly, as long as they're on board with like what Lighthizer and the trade guys are going to do, it'll be fine. Pete Hegseth we talked about, Bondi, the new Attorney General one we talked about. Burgum was last week. All right, Brooke Rollins is agriculture. She's Congress. She's from Congress.
Yep.
She's the vector of attack against her in from the right is that she is pro union,
Correct.
which I don't think is a problem for Trump. These are again traditional conservative ideas versus the way Trump wants to do his thing. He wants union workers to be on board because he wants to bring jobs back to America. This
And
is why
remember, he met with the head of the unions, so
yeah,
the
so
Teamsters.
this is and here's a fun thing. If you do a mass deportation where we're talking like millions of people being deported, you're going to need a lot of transportation. You know who would be really happy with getting jobs doing that? Teamsters, who
Teamsters.
are the union for drivers, right? So I feel like there's talk, like Trump is going to protect flanks, with the unions to keep building that. He's building that bridge. The bridge for the unions is, look, we will work with you as long as you are just advocating for your workers and not up to just political gamesmanship and shenanigans. That's why I think Trump will work with employer unions like blue collar ones, but he's not going to work with like the NEA or teachers unions
Teachers union, a big
because
one.
that's
Yeah.
they're completely captured institutional corrupt political animals, whereas a lot of these working blue collar unions, as they elect new leadership, like the Teamsters is a good example, as they're getting some of the younger leadership that's been post NAFTA, that
Hmm.
wasn't in the unions before NAFTA, they're way more willing to work with and talk to Trump,
Yeah.
as opposed to, and the unions where they elect, like that's why the UAW is a problem, because their new head was actually a former Obama guy. So I don't think the UAW is going to get the welcome mat as they would like, and Trump's going to not, and I think Trump's going to hold them accountable for that. Now, yeah, so back to Brooke Rollins, she's got an actual agriculture degree. She's from a zone, where, you know, um, I believe she's trained
Flyover
like,
country.
well, I was going to say, I think she's second generation or third generation farmer. So I mean, she's also a lawyer. She worked again with think tanks. Uh, she's got the bona fides from the like conservative establishment side, but given her what am I call it? Given her stances on things, I think she's a perfectly acceptable choice for agriculture. She's going to be working with probably RFK a lot with what of some of his policies about getting food cleaned up. Hopefully she's all on board with, agriculture is going to have a lot to say about when we do these mass deportations. The number one thing people are going to start getting on them about is like, well, who's going to pick the crops? Because
Right.
that's where all the labor comes from. So it's going to be important that the Secretary of Agriculture is on board with doing something. Yeah, there you go. They're picking pockets. I saw an analysis, right, where if they actually, instead of illegal labor, paid regular labor to like pick apples,
Yeah.
it would raise the cost per pound of apple about 0.03 cents when you do, because like a person who
Well, that's
picks
a lot
apples.
less than inflation, huh?
Yeah, so the reason being, like, an apple picker can pick this much per day, and this many ton, like pick like this many tons or weight per day, and when you factor it all in, their cost per day would go from, I think, like $350 a day to like $750 a day if you were paying prevailing wages for an American citizen. And
Right.
it sounds like a big increase, but when you take that extra $400 and divide it out over the volume of apples they're supposed to pick in a day, it doesn't raise your cost very much.
And I don't know
Now,
if you mentioned Don Brooks. She was also the co-founder and president of the America First Policy Institute. So she's been aligned with Trump for a long time.
yep. So I don't see a problem with her. I mean, that's why, again, they're putting people in positions where you can trust what they're going to do. Um Like Doug Burgum, we talked about last week, he's kind of wishy-washy on some things, but as interior, he is trustworthy because his policy positions align for his whole life. Commerce with Howard Lutnick. Lutnick is a great one. I think he was there last week when we talked, because even though he's a Wall Street guy, I know you've probably seen the clips where he's been out there defending tariffs and how they can be used to effectively strengthen the American economy.
Yeah,
So
he spoke at a few different rallies, including I think the MSG rally that took place right before the election. So yeah, he's a good pick. I think it'll be fine there.
yeah, so then we've got Lori Chavez DeRemer. I think, is she also a congressman?
Yes, congressman or former congressman, I can't remember, but or congresswoman, whatever.
Let's see. I think so. This is
And
one
there's some
where,
pushback on it too
yeah,
because
she's a
very
toxic,
very pro union.
which I don't mind because Trump is remaking the coalition.
Mm-hmm.
We are moving to a working class party. You're gonna have to work with union labor. Union labor, as it was envisioned, is not a problem. Union labor, as it was corrupted by the mob and democratic politics, is a problem. If you can remove that and help labor get back to just working for their workers, labor unions are fine, because the idea that I'm upset with with workers leveraging their um advantage, using their leverage to get more wages, it reminds like when the dock workers were on strike.
Right.
I was fine with it because, number one, you know who owns all our docks? China.
China.
China, it's Chinese corporations that actually own all those docks. So they were striking against Chinese corporations to get higher wages. So why am I upset about that? I know that we paid the clip because the union boss was like, I'm going to make the, he's using, it's the language of leverage. It's a New Yorker talking about using his leverage. It's like Trump saying you could shoot someone in the street. It's hyperbolic because that's how they kind of talk about things in New York. It's why Trump can get along with those guys. He's been in that world for so long. He speaks that language. A union boss saying that I'm using my leverage to make you bleed till you give my boys what they deserve, on principle, it doesn't bother me as long as it's like, if it's an public employee unions are no, because that's government and there's too many ways to corrupt that process. Private business having to deal with workers leveraging to get more money, in principle, that's a-okay with me, and I think Trump is okay with it too. Use your
Right.
leverage, because he's all about leverage. It's the art of the
Expand the
deal.
base.
Yeah. And I think Trump is smart because if he wants to make this a generational shift for the Republican Party, you start putting in picks that are going to start getting the union guys to be comfortable talking at the RNC, getting their guys to go to Republican rallies, getting their people out to vote for Republican candidates because they'll take care of American workers. Bam. There you go.
Yep. Who do we got next? Scott Turner at HUD. Did we have him last week? I can't remember if we.
No, he was a new one. So Scott Turner, Sean Duffy are both new. So the new ones were Sean Duffy, Scott Turner, Lori Chavez Demir, and
Linda
Brooke Rollin,
McMahon.
and Linda McMahon at which isn't. I guess we didn't scroll down, and her at Education. But Sean Duffy is former real world cast member, former
Right.
congressman. He's fine. He's
Married
worked.
to Rachel Campos Duffy over at Fox News, I believe, right?
Yes, that's
And
his
they've got like
wife.
9 or 10 kids.
They do. So he knows about trying to transport large groups. He
Right.
knows he's got more familiarity with it than Buttigieg. And I think he's actually worked in transport, like that was one of the things I think he worked on like committees on. So he has a lot more, government experience than our last one did, in theory. His main job in transportation, honestly, is going to be unwinding a lot of the shit that the Biden people put in. Like we have a lot
The
of
racist overpasses and whatnot.
well, the regulatory stuff. Remember, they put in
Yeah.
cafe standards that are going to destroy the American car industry. Are trying to mandate electric cars by, was it 2032, where only
2032 or 35, yeah.
yeah, that only electric cars are going to get. No, 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 no.
I'd like to see him roll back the kill switches in vehicles starting what next year is when that was supposed to start.
Yep. So I
Kill
think,
switches in every vehicle.
yeah, so Duffy's main job is, again, these are all positions where the outline is there now. Your job is to just execute Trump's policy agenda. I mean, Project 2025 for Sean Duffy is going to be making, cars gas powered again. So
Right.
so he's another one where he's just there. He's there for a specific task, and I think he'll be fine doing it. Scott Turner, same deal. He's in HUD. That's part of Trump specifically views HUD as a way to outreach to the minority communities that vote for him, that don't
Right.
go.
Which is why
Uh,
you had Ben Carson there last
yeah,
time too.
and I think the first Trump term is going to be a perfect playbook to analyze for what they'll do in HUD, where they really pushed opportunity zones and
Hmm.
to remove taxes, regulation, and barriers of entry for minority businesses in those dilapidated urban zones. And it worked, because when people looked back at what Trump did in his one term versus what Biden was doing, a lot of those minority communities were making a lot of comments like Trump was doing good stuff to try to bring these cities back and get workers back working and businesses. It was noticed. So if Trump keeps doing that, I think, again, these are moves to shore up Trump's vision, taking over and reshaping the Republican Party for the long term. And you
Right.
have to view it that way.
Expanding the base, expanding the tent, all of that stuff. Exactly. So, education, you had some thoughts on Linda.
Yeah, so a lot of people are like, Linda McMahon, she's got no qualifications, and you even mentioned that you thought it was more just a payback pick because, she's going to get a job. And my thought on Linda McMahon is that she's business first, right? She ran the WWE. The WWE becoming a $1 billion enterprise wasn't Vince McMahon that did it, it was Linda. Linda was the one actually running the business
The
side
business side of it, yeah.
to make it that big a success. So she went into small business administration in the first term, and that was a great fit for her, and she did a lot of good things for this. Trump has made it clear that what they want to do is completely eliminate the Department of Education. You can't do that without congressional sign off, and they might be able to get it through budget reconciliation, but it's going to be a little while before that happens. My view is that Linda McMahon is in there because she has no agenda for education. She hasn't given speeches on education for 20 years with her own pet projects. Like Betsy DeVos was in there, and she was an advocate for school choice. So she was trying to use the Department of Education and its regulatory power to push that. I think Linda McMahon understands the agenda, the assignment.
The assignment.
She has no agenda to increase anything in education. Her agenda is to downsize and eliminate
Start
the
the
department.
dismantling.
And that's what you need. You need somebody who doesn't have any vested interest in any facet of education, so they won't be tempted to use it for their own pet projects. So that they're just going to be cut, cut, cut. What about this one? You like this one? It's still got to get cut because it's going away. Cut, cut, cut. Like she's overseeing the decline and closing of that department. She's she's almost like
Well,
a
and
bankruptcy trustee.
it doesn't take any political capital to have Linda McMahon do that, because she's she's not inherently a political creature. I mean, she did run for office a few times, but I don't think she was ever elected. And she has been in the government with Trump, but she's independently wealthy. She doesn't
Yep.
have to do anything after this. So even if, this basically blacklists her as far as part of the country, doesn't matter to her.
Yes. And that's my thought on it is, as Davina is saying, the mandate is to close the Department of Education. So you need someone in there who's not vested in education. You need someone who's a businessy minded person who is like, I'm here with the task from my CEO, and I'm the VP, just tasked with unwinding and closing this underperforming division, and then redistributing any tasks that have to be done to other parts of government.
Because right now we're what, ranked 29th? We're before the Department of Education, we were first or second, somewhere up there in the top three, and we've fallen all the way to 29th as far as education in this country. So yeah, it's not a department that's working. We all know that. So throw it back to the states, let them come up with their own curriculum, and let's actually get back to teaching instead of the stupid crap that they've been putting through. I mean, they've now got math to where they don't want parents to be able to teach their kids math because they've got what is the new system
Common
called?
Core.
Common Core math. Yeah, and I mean, we see examples of it on Twitter all the time where it's like the teacher marking it wrong because they put three fours instead of four threes, and it's like that's insane. As far as how to get to 12, I mean, stuff like that. You have to do all these groupings rather than just knowing how to do math and learning how to add, multiply, subtract, and divide. I've seen my kids' homework. It's insane what they try to do. So, yeah, we're ready for it to be gone.
Yep. I think that's why I'm happy with that pick. I think some people are criticizing and being a little too, and this happens, get a little black pilled on certain things. It's still swamp and all this. I think Trump's team has been planning like the agenda for when they get back in for a long time. That transition, and if you go back and read a lot of the background stuff, they looked back on the mistakes of the first term, and they're working on trying to alleviate it because they want to get it, hit the ground running and push what they can get. And a lot of it's going to be through unrolling regulation and executive action and making the moves that are going to shore up support with the people that got Trump into office, and that will take the Republicans to a long-term majority party instead of a Trump part can win but nobody else can.
Right.
So,
Which is the ultimate goal. You've got to be able to keep power after Trump.
which is why I think it's hilarious. I still see people out there like DeSantis would have won this in a walk. No, DeSantis would have lost to Kamala Harris. He would have actually lost. And I'm not kidding on that because DeSantis does not. The places where Trump ran up the vote and got people to turn out would not have turned out for DeSantis. They wouldn't have trusted him. They wouldn't have thought he would do stuff to take care of them as the working class blue collar voters. We saw it in 2012. Romney is DeSantis 1.0. He was the non offensive, very capable Republican, and he got trounced. And that's so Trump is the one who gets those voters. Trump is the roadmap for what they need to do. And I've been talking about I was waiting for somebody like Trump for years because the alignments of the parties had shifted so dramatically in the late 90s into the early O's where the corporations had moved entirely to being kind of Democrat institutions and were funding Democrat policies. It was like it
Yep.
makes perfect sense. Like the working class is actually aligned with what the Republicans want.
Yeah,
So
coming too close to a corporatocracy, which
yeah,
is just as bad as an authoritarian government. If if you have corporate takeover of the government and corporate running everything, because the decisions aren't in the hands of the people at that point, and the government is supposed to work for you. Too
yeah,
much of us working for the government.
yeah. So this is kind of a this is the time where Trump hopefully can put up, and if he puts it up, remember Reagan won big in '84 and ran and effectively made people very happy about what was going on in the US for another 4 years. And that's basically made the '88 election a cakewalk for George H.W. Bush. It also
Yep,
helps that they put up Dukakis, who was a historically terrible candidate.
correct.
Vance is in the same spot where if Trump does the and if Vance helps him, if Trump does the stuff he said he's going to do, and it helps America get better like it should, like him doing these things, I think factually will, without any kind of argument, would definitively improve the lives for lots of Americans. And that means in 2028, Vance could be in a position to walk right in for another term and then continue it.
Yeah.
That's where we can make the progress and lock that stuff in. So
The
they just got
first
to do it.
100 to 150 days is going
Yep.
to be incredibly important to see some turnaround in the country.
Yep. And that's why the main thing is we definitely he needs to not back down on actually deporting people. Like day one, I'm hoping, in term, not that everything should be done in terms of executive action, but I want him to, like he said, officially declare the state of emergency for invasion at the border and use that. And because if he does that as commander in chief, he can, if you declare states of emergency, as everyone saw during COVID, it gives you a lot of freedom to start cutting regulation to do things. So I see. You said
You made
don't.
Gojira a little
Yeah,
bit sick.
I was only doing it in the context that the reason Bush won was
The
because
type of election. Yeah.
of Reagan being an effective president. It's not that they're the same people. So the reason 2000 was as close as it was because people felt that Bill Clinton was an effective president. If they hadn't put up Al Gore, is again historically not likable. I'm Al Gore, lockbox,
Lockbox.
lockbox, and the .com bubble was bursting, and there were layoffs around 2000. So there was a lot of people uneasy at that time. So that's what kind of helped tank his ability to be the third Clinton term. And by the way, for people I see online, people are like, but Trump didn't get 50% of the vote, even though he won the popular vote, right? They're trying to, he's at like 49.9.
Yeah.
Here's what my comeback to that is show me where Bill Clinton won a majority of the popular vote in either of his elections. He didn't.
43% is where he topped out at, right?
That was in 92, but
And
it
they
got
called that a
split.
mandate.
Yeah. And then in 96, when he ran, he won, I think, 47%.
47.
So and that is they were perfectly fine with that being a mandate for him. Everything's a mandate when Democrats win, no matter how small, and nothing's a mandate when Republicans win, no matter how big. They didn't think George. They said Reagan didn't have a mandate in '84 because the House stayed Democrat.
Well, in
He
this
won
case, the
49
House, the
states.
Senate, the popular vote, and the Electoral College.
Yeah,
It's a
so
mandate.
it's funny. Yeah, that's why
And
you
a hard
can't find.
shift in almost every state to the right.
That's true, except for Utah. Utah
Right.
shifted left
Utah's
because
the weird
Utah's
one.
a problem. We got to keep eyes on Utah. I feel like
It's
we're
that
probably
California, Colorado
well,
influence moving in.
on the Mormons. They're being captured, man. So I would
They're
say
turning the freaking Mormons gay.
they are. I think I'm not lying. I feel like we are probably 15 years from Utah being a purple and 20 years from it being blue.
Well, and we see that often. I mean, a few years ago, well, a few election cycles ago, it was Ohio and Florida were the battleground states, the swing states. States move in and out of those, solid colors all the time. We've got completely new battleground states, swing states in this election cycle than we did, 12 years ago. So, but it's something where you've got to start shoring it up as you see the colors start to change because we didn't do anything in Colorado and boom, you've got a solid blue state that used to be red, was purple for a very short amount of time, and then is captured.
It's funny that one of the quickest ways they could make Virginia a battleground to even red state again, one of the concepts that is being pushed in Trump's possible first term is to divest agencies from DC to actual states, like move the Department of Agriculture to like Kansas or Ohio, or not Ohio, Iowa or Kansas, like a place where they actually do agriculture, to move like the interior to like Wyoming or Nebraska, where they have all these federal lands they're supposed to be managing. And if you do that and you start moving these government employees, number one, a lot of them will be like, pshaw, I won't work in flyover country. and so they'll self-deport from government employment. Or
Hmm.
number two, you put it like one agency moving like the number of workers who will go there isn't gonna. You put them in some of those deep red states, they're not going to swing it, and you've basically neutered like the Virginia red blue comes from Fairfax County, Loudoun County, that government suburb, and now Prince William County. You start moving those people out and spread them around the country, you make Virginia and its 13 to 14 electoral votes, well, 13, I think, currently, back into a swing state to red state.
Yeah. Um, we touched on Doge a little bit. Do you want to go into some of that Elon Musk news from this week? Because he's been all over the place between the rockets, MSNBC talks, and I think he had announced yesterday that him and Vivek are going to start a podcast that will literally be showing all the work that they're doing in Doge with full transparency. Transparency. They will just be going over the numbers during the podcast each week and saying, "Well, this is what we found. This is what we're going to, suggest to the president and to the rest of the government that we should do about this." So I think the MSNBC news was hilarious.
Yeah.
MSNBC goes up for sale, and Musk basically says, "Dare me to buy it."
I like yeah, the meme he posted was a little bit risque, but it's
Right.
it gets the point across. I mean, it is funny that Universal, Comcast Universal, is basically peace out on cable networks except for Bravo. The only thing they want to keep is Bravo, because you know what they want to keep? Real Housewives. They want
Right.
that. Trash reality is more valuable to Comcast to be put that stuff on Peacock than all of their news channels, all their like USA, Sci-Fi Channel, MSNBC, all of these other cable channels. They're like, no, we don't want them. We'll sell them. Bravo, no, we're keeping that.
Yeah.
Real Housewives drives the numbers, man. So we're we're not getting rid of Bravo.
It's a sad
Uh,
state, sad state of affairs that we live in at the moment.
yeah, so Elon is definitely. I mean, Doge is going to be interesting because it's a commission. There's nobody who has to be. You can have government employees, you can have civilian people, you can have business people. You can kind of bring in whatever you want for the analysis on the that this commission is doing. They're going to prepare a report. There's been lots of all right. So in the old days, they used to just call them blue ribbon panels or presidential commissions.
Right.
It's where the president, under his executive powers, brings together a group of people who have a mandate to analyze and make recommendations, and then from those recommendations, they usually try to take some kind of action. Doge is getting a little more high profile, but it's the same concept, just executed with
Yeah.
more
It's a step
panache.
below being appointed as a czar,
Yeah.
which didn't really exist until what, Obama, or a little bit earlier than that, in that name.
So
That's the first time I can remember them
the
just naming czars left and right.
the first one that got named specifically like a czar was the drug czar, which
Right.
was the person tasked. I believe it was the 80s. Was it Reagan who might have been the first one who did that? Where they
Maybe.
appointed someone specifically with the task of overseeing the DEA and some of the other agencies as a, to make a coordinated assault on the drug war from a government standpoint.
Right. Someone who everything runs through, even though they're
And
not technically like a cabinet position in any way.
yeah, so it's so they get brought in the yeah, and they brought into, oh man, I guess the drug czar position dates back to the 1930s. Good for them.
Hmm.
Just
Were they
looking it up.
using the term czar?
Uh First commissioner of the Treasury Department's Federal Bureau of Narcotics. They used to have a Federal Bureau of Narcotics in the Treasury. That
In
was
the Treasury?
Treasury agents. Because remember,
Yeah, like
Treasury
Elliot
was
Ness.
Treasury was tasked with enforcing prohibition,
Right.
which was it's a
The
weird.
Untouchables and Elliot
Yeah,
Ness,
they
and
were Treasury agents. They were like, that's why they got them on taxes, because
right.
they had the accountants too. over there to get
Exactly.
him. So yeah, but that's where that was the first one that actually got like called a czar, and it and they're and they when they created like the Office of National Drug Control Policy, that was more like in the 80s when they kind of refined it, and then it got like you said, Obama like put it on speed where he
Full
started
blast.
making like because he didn't want to have to get people approved through a Republican or well, he didn't have a Republican one. He had 60 votes initially. He just didn't want to have to deal with up getting people appointed to the through. He didn't want. This is how crazy Obama was.
Official channels.
He had a 60 vote majority in the Senate, meaning that is cloture proof, right? You can end filibusters.
Yep.
He could have, he just needed 51 votes. He could have lost 9 of his own party and still got someone, you know, appointed
Appointed through official channels.
through
Yeah.
official channels, and he still didn't want to do it because he just wanted his people to be outside of, because by doing that they were outside of government authority a little bit. They became, because once you're an advisor to the president like that, it also gives you very strict protections about when Congress can call you to testify, because one of the things you have, and you've heard it before, is a term called executive privilege.
Hmm.
Advisors giving advice to the president are protected from having to testify about that, the contents of that advice, under the concept of executive privilege. But if you're an appointed cabinet member overseeing a department in the government, or you've been appointed by the Senate with specific powers and authority, the Senate and Congress now have the ability to oversight what actions you're taking. It was an end round. In a lot of ways, it was like bleaching your own private server so no one could see what was happening.
Yeah.
So
But who would know how to do that?
yeah, so it's so the Trump's got his Doge is kind of falling under that where it's advised. That's also going to mean that a lot of this stuff might be outside of um, congressional oversight. Now, the downside is if you're making all these public, podcasts and other things, it's going to be hard to argue in a court that you're giving, you know, privileged advice to the executive when you're publicly putting all this stuff out there. So it kind of punctures your privilege argument. So you got to be a little careful on that.
Yeah. I mean,
But,
they'll be careful on it, I think, but at the same time, it's just going to be transparent, which is what we're all asking for. I mean, it's basically just a full audit of the books of the U.S. government is
mhm.
what Doge is going to be doing. So,
God help them if they start public if they audit the Fed. Ooh.
right.
And by the way, that is also going to be, I would say, a first quarter to 6 months of Trump's administration is I think he's going to go with pushing firing Powell
Yeah.
so that Powell can't screw up his tariff and trade policy agenda, and that's going to be a big fight. That's going to be expedited very quickly. It's going to take a year because they'll spend. And Powell's going to go through the DC.
Claim that he can't be fired.
It's going to go through the DC circuit courts, which immediately go up to. It goes DC Circuit, DC Appeals Court, Supreme Court. It's the rocket docket for Supreme Court review. Powell's going to say that he's not able to get fired because of the way Supreme Court precedent from the 1930s says if you are a non executive bipartisan agency not doing executive work, the president can't fire you if your term, your term is good. You can't, the president can't just fire you. That goes back to some agencies and things that were set up in the 1930s under FDR. That's the last time, and that's technically right now the controlling Supreme Court precedent. It's going to be really hard, I think, for Powell to prove in court that the Fed is not doing executive tasks. Monetary
Well,
policy is vested in the executive.
and the Supreme Court has kind of signaled that, yeah, if it's not created by Congress, then it automatically is falling under the executive. So, I mean, they've kind of signaled that, yeah, if he wanted to get rid of him, he could. It may
Yeah,
be a legal argument and a legal fight, but ultimately it'll come down to the Supreme Court is looking at it as you can't have something outside of the government controlling the Fed or the money. It's either Congress controls it legislatively or the executive branch holds authority over it. It's not outside of the government.
I mean, I would argue that the Congress has already delegated when they created the Department of the Treasury. Like the
Yeah.
Treasury is technically printing money. Treasury controls printing of money.
Hmm.
So the Fed, by way of their monetary policy, effectively prints and creates money. They are
Right.
doing executive actions with their qualitative eating, quantitative easing, whatever.
Pinochet had mentioned it a little bit back. Treasury falls under executive. Secret Service does as well. They handle the counterfeiting and the printing.
Yep, Treasury agents, right? So that's why I think that case is going to be ripe, and I don't know that Democrats are going to want the to get the outcome. We have a Supreme Court where the current makeup killed Chevron and have
Yep.
signaled through the Trump immunity decision that they are very big fans of the um, unitary executive theory, where the president being the only named executive branch member in the Constitution hold all
Has the
executive
authorities of the
all
executive
yeah
branch.
all executive power flows through him. And when you say and before you say the vice president, it's interesting because the vice president is created, but they don't vest him with executive power. The role the vice president is given per the Constitution is
President of
president
the
of the
Senate.
Senate, which is a legislative role, not an executive role. So the only person given executive power in the Constitution is the president. And so even when the Congress creates executive agencies through tax policies and spending money, it's all flowing underneath the person charged with executing it, who is the president.
Correct.
So unitary executive theory says because of that, anybody in the executive branch, from the janitor at the Department of Education to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, serves at the pleasure of the president and can be fired at any time,
Yep. At will.
regardless of what they say their civil service union protections are.
And
So,
nobody elected Powell. He's not the one that the American people are saying, yes, we want you to go in and change it. So, yeah, that change would be huge if we can get it to happen in the first year. Because I think Powell will work against Trump at every step he can.
Eric says Alito said he won't retire, makes Vance winning 28 more important. I mean, they all signal that they won't retire. The main person, Thomas is older. Thomas should probably finish up this term and get out. I mean, I don't want to push anybody out, but you can see we don't. Having these seats on the Supreme Court has been key as the last bulwark against tyranny. Like,
Yeah.
because if you put more Kenji Browns on there, the First Amendment isn't worth what it's printed on. The
She
Second
doesn't
Amendment,
understand it either way.
she said in the Supreme Court that the First Amendment seems like an impediment to what the government wants to do,
It's
and maybe we should.
hamstringing the federal government.
And it's
That
like,
can't be right.
did you read a Federalist paper? Weren't you a constitutional law professor? Crazy. Like those words coming out. I think my favorite reaction was Jonathan Turley, who was just aghast when he heard that. He was
Right.
like you nobody. This is the least controversial thing in the world is that the First Amendment constrains the government, and
Well,
she's
that
acting
and
like
what is
that's
a
a
woman?
yeah. So yeah, it's that's going to be a fight that probably happens in the first 6 months as well.
It was funny. I don't have the graphic that I was looking at yesterday, but the number of words said by the Supreme Court justices in this last term came out yesterday, and
Oh
she's up
yeah,
at like twenty-seven
no,
thousand
the
by
top
far.
three. So she's number one, followed by Sotomayor, followed by Kagan,
Yeah,
and they are
and then
all
they're at like 27,000
yeah,
words spoken, and
and
then
they're
there's like Thomas at 1,300 words,
he's the low end,
which
but
yeah, which is more than he usually says. So
yeah,
He's
It's
gotten
just
quite vocal.
yeah, it's and even like they were orders of magnitude above the next closest republic. Like they even the lowest one of them, I believe, was 2 or 3 times more than the Republican.
Yeah. Let me see if I can find that graphic. Yeah, here it is. Let's share that real quick, just because it's hilarious.
Hmm.
All right. So, yeah, let's blow it up. Number of words spoken by each Supreme Court justice in 2024 as of November 15th. Here's Ketanji Brown Jackson, 22,718 words. Kagan, 16,500. Sotomayor, almost 15,000. Thomas down there at 3,800. Barrett at 66, 69. Gorsuch is up there a bit.
Gorsuch, if you so they've done it's I forget maybe it's like been 10 plus years now that they started making the audio of all the Supreme Court hearings available. They don't have cameras in the courtroom, but you can listen live or listen to the audio of the Supreme Court oral arguments for every case.
Right.
And Gorsuch is awesome on those because he will not let them get away with shit. Like Gorsuch is great, and he doesn't always make decisions that I like, but actually he goes specifically by the law, right? With the most one of the most famous cases that conservatives kind of didn't like was when he effectively said that I think it was Oklahoma still basically belongs to the Indian tribes.
Right.
And they're like, how can there's no way? And he's like, look, the
Based
last
on the
official
treaty that
based
exists.
on the treaty that we did, and there's been no official treaty or law since then.
That's
All that
the
land was ceded to them, and and it's like now practically, Oklahoma City, all these other places, yeah, they took them and they built stuff, and it's not going away. But legally speaking, the last text that we have to refer to is this treaty giving it to him. So he's like, this is I'm bound by what the law is. If you guys want to reach an accommodation, you need to do it and update it.
legislatively. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is typically what you're asking for from your Supreme Court justices. Interpret the law as it is, and if something needs to be changed legislatively, it needs to be changed legislatively.
I don't want Supreme Court justices creating rights out of blank dead air, which is what happened in Roe v. Wade, which eventually got overturned because that decision, even Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the liberal lion s, was like that decision
Yes.
was one of the stupidest ones
One
the
of the
Supreme Court had, because they took the implied right to privacy that comes from the
14th.
prohibitions against the illegal searches and seizures to the right to be secure in your persons and papers.
Yeah.
So the interpretation of that has grown to the right of, like, there is no right to privacy. There is a right to not be searched illegally. But they've interpreted that to create a right to general privacy. And then from there they took one implied right, and then they grew a complete other one which says because of the implied right to privacy, you therefore have an implied right to abortion.
Right.
Because abortion actually, and this was the Roe v. Wade legal logic, was abortion was a wellspring from the implied right to privacy moving into medical decision making. That makes no sense. It doesn't legally stand up.
It was a
So,
horribly decided case.
and that's why, and Ogerfeld, which is the decision on gay marriage, is another one where they take I believe it was the 14th Amendment due process and
Mm-hmm.
conflate and shift and move that into some kind of, and this is where Kennedy was completely off base, into the decision making, was that the due process rights provide cover for people based on moral standing, that love is love and therefore due process should allow them to get married. which doesn't make sense. That legal scrutiny, because once you open that up, we've talked about it's not a slippery slope. It's a freaking tube slide at a water park
Yeah.
for how quickly you go from that logic to allowing polygamy, incest marriages, whatever decision you want to make. Map people really, there's a reason the map, and I'm using that to
Blue
be
sky is infected.
yeah, I'm using that to be YouTube friendly because I don't like the term, but I know if we use the other words, Brahma just got monetized and I don't want to mess with them. But the map people were really big fans of Overfeld as a decision. Why would those people be really happy with that decision? Because it's a hop, skip, and a jump of lawsuits away from saying that people who can make informed consent decision making can engage in choices to
Right,
do certain
because
things.
love is love.
Which is why, and this is why I'm gonna pull the onion layers back here, which is why they're so committed to the trans medical healthcare decision making part, because once they create legal precedent that minor children can consent to
Consent.
healthcare changes, you totally take away the argument that minor children can't consent to other things with their body.
Right.
Now, and I'm sure most of our chat understands that, but that's where, I mean, these are people playing three steps down the line for legal cases. They want to get one domino to fall to get to the next domino to fall to get to their end game, and their end game is being able to engage in shenanigans, and it's not good.
Correct.
And
Yep.
anybody looking at the logic of it can see it, which is why we're like, are we taking crazy pills? Because you should be able to see this. It's not this is how it's
A
going to
lot of us have
flow.
been screaming it since 2008.
Yeah, so it's a problem, and that's why I'm not so to circle back to get to the weave. I'm doing a Trump weave. Why
Mhm.
I don't care about the Trump appointments is because they're all directionally pushing his agenda, and I trust his agenda to try to stave off or reverse or stop that way more than I trust anybody else. So I am not going to complain or black pill or try to just do this. I'm not going to be just rah rah, but I think we haven't even seen these people get in office yet, and we're
Right.
trying to like complain about shit.
Well, and the other thing is, unlike in the Biden administration, Trump will fire people. If somebody's not pulling their weight, not doing what they're supposed to be tasked with doing, he has no problem with firing somebody. Biden wouldn't fire anybody. I mean, it took what, stealing luggage for one person to be fired in the Biden administration, and I'm sure that they wouldn't have done it unless the videos hadn't come out.
Well, you know why it really was is because he stole a black woman designer's luggage,
Hmm.
who was
And
actually
she happened to be the one who actually created the clothes, so she recognized them when he was
yeah.
wearing them.
So it was on the wheel of diversity and equity. He was a white male trans person. I believe that is trumped because I think she might have also been a person of color, like queer designer, and that moves her up the peg
The intersectionality
from the
pyramid.
intersectionality. Yeah, on the intersectionality pyramid. So it was, you know, I
Yeah.
think that's why he actually got fired. If she had been a white woman Christian whose bag that he stole, they would have been like, whatever, bigot.
Right.
He's fierce in those clothes and you're jealous.
Who cares that you designed them and you created them and made them? Yeah, he stole luggage multiple times. That was just the one where it was easy to get caught because it was one of a kind clothes that were designed by the woman specifically. There was not other copies of them. It's not like it was mass produced. So,
Oh, so that's what it was. She's actually African. That's she's yeah, you're right. I
yeah,
don't it
she's
wasn't
not
that she was
American at
queer.
all.
She was an indigenous person and he was stealing as a colonizer. So that completely means that he has to be moved on.
Oh yeah.
It's like so I'm sure he'll get a job at the Southern Poverty Law Center.
What? So some of the other things that happened this week, Sonny Hostin has now had to issue 3 on-air
She's
statements,
super thrilled
legal
about it
notes.
too.
I know.
Her resting sunny face when she gives them
Oh,
is classic.
it's glorious.
Because
I mean, we could
like
bring up one. I don't want to bring up all
part
of
of it
them,
is
but
because ABC is currently in a lawsuit from Trump because George Stephanopoulos 3 times in a single interview, even after he was corrected by the person he was interviewing, said that Trump was convicted of rape
right.
when he was not. There's a on the jury verdict form in the E. Jean Carroll case. One of the questions where the jury found unanimously was no was, do you believe Donald Trump raped E. Jean Carroll? And it was no. So that is, that's a pretty definitive legal judgment. And when you're for the whole thing about malice and news media to be able to sue for defamation is they have to be aware of the lie and continue to say it. So this video where the guy actually corrects Trump, right, where the interviewee corrects Stephanopoulos and says, no, he was not convicted of rape. And Stephanopoulos looks at him and says, yes, he was. He was convicted of rape. And he does it like 3 times. That's why the judge wouldn't dismiss it, because it shows he was knowingly continuing to say something.
Knowingly and repeatedly,
Yeah.
yeah.
Which is why The View had to keep doing this, because Sonny Hostin and all these people are being given the right answer and right information, but were knowingly saying otherwise.
They're just foaming at the mouth rabid
Yep.
at this point. They cannot help themselves. Let's take a look at I believe this was the 3rd note that she had to do.
I have a legal note.
You want to take this one, Joy, or are you
Matt
good?
Gaetz has long denied all allegations and has not been charged with any crime.
That's true.
Also, another legal note, Pete Hegseth's lawyer said he paid the woman in 2023 to head off the threat of a baseless lawsuit. He has denied any wrongdoing.
That's interesting. Pay off the witness.
Well,
Okay, they act like that's not something that happens routinely, where it's
Yeah,
cheaper
it's
to just
never
do a
happened.
settlement. All right, I'll give you an example. When I was at Geico, we had accidents where we 100% knew the person was lying out their ass about being hurt.
Right, but it
And
costs less to settle than
and
it does to
did I
go to court.
did I write those people checks? Yeah, sure as shit did.
Yep.
And what were the checks? Sometimes thousands of dollars. Yes, they were. Now, was it what the person wanted and what the lawyer wanted? No. But it
No.
was more like, look, the cost and risk to my insured of going into a jury with this case is not worth it. So I'm going to write you a couple $1,000 check. We had a policy
A
where
go away check.
yeah, where we would settle if you settled for under $1,000. If someone said they were hurt in an accident, and it was a low impact kind of like rear end, but there wasn't much damage, and you wait till you get the pictures of the car when you're
Fender
like,
bender.
where it's like there's not really any damage, and the auto damage people are like, yeah, this is probably, we had some physics tests where that basically it was the equivalent of if you were in an office chair and someone walked by you and brushed it, was the force you would have felt in the driver's seat.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, all right, we'll write you up to $1,000 check to make it go away and just do it. In fact, in insurance, settlement of injury claims does not raise your insurance rates because it's so outside of your control. It's the property damage and frequency of at-fault accidents. And I don't know
At this point, they're kind of taking into account any claim, including claims closed without payment. So
at least not not Geico. Geico mainly because they didn't do homeowners and have the risk of doing all that other stuff. It was all car. But for
yeah,
rating
all car
wise,
is a little bit different than
yeah.
multi-line
So
companies.
from Geico, where we just did car insurance, because there were so many factors that are completely out of control of you as the driver for why an injury settlement is getting done and how much it is. It was the amount of money from an injury settlement made no bearing, or even paying one, on your rates going up. It was just we would rate it based on at fault accident and property damage caused. Because if you run into somebody and you only cause like $100, by the way, $100 of bumper damage is basically scuffing the bumper and they just have to paint it.
Well, at this point, a scuff on the bumper is about $1,200.
Yeah, it was going up by the time I was leaving too. But if it's
Yeah.
that kind of property damage, you can't control that someone will say, "Ow, oh, my neck," and make an ambulance take them to a hospital, and and then you have to pay the ambulance fee, and you have to pay the hospital ER fee, and you know what? Those are all 100%. You're going to pay them every time because that's just the way it works. That can be a couple grand. And is that we know perfectly well based on the amount of damage, you didn't do anything to that person really.
Right.
So that's why it wasn't rated. In this case, Hegseth made a rational choice that he was a Fox News television host, and this woman coming out and accusing him of casually brahmaing her at a event in San Diego, probably, even though it was completely false, would have got him fired and ruined his career. He wrote her a check. And for people who don't think that kind of stuff can happen, look in pro athletes, right? There is a pitcher from the Los Angeles Dodgers who was a Cy Young winner.
Yep.
He was falsely accused. Like, we mean not just falsely accused, they ended up arresting the woman who made these false accusations for filing false police reports. He is
But it
still
took,
not back in
what, 2
baseball.
years?
No,
And
he's
yeah,
still not back.
no, but I mean, it took like 2 years for
Yeah.
him to get his name
Yeah.
cleared.
I mean,
It ended up admitting that it was all fake,
there is a punter.
and he still can't get a job.
There's a punter for the Buffalo Bills who was the best. He was a Pro Bowl punter. There was an accusation that when he was in college, there was a gang casual brahmaning that he was involved in. And the Buffalo Bills, like, immediately cut him. And they didn't even listen to him, to the fact that he wasn't even there when this happened. Like, he had evidence, like, I wasn't even at the college when this event allegedly occurred. Didn't matter. They cut him, and it took him a couple years to even get a tryout again. And that was something where he filed a lawsuit, ended up getting a settlement from the girl, admitting that she lied about him being there.
Yeah. The Duke lacrosse team's another good one.
Yeah, so
false accusations happen all the time.
Using stuff against, where someone sends a settlement and to get an NDA, we've made that like some kind of automatically guilty thing. It's not. And it's like what they're doing to Hegseth
Well, it's
is
the court
dirty.
of public opinion versus actual law.
Yeah. And Hegseth, look, like we talked about earlier, was it skeezy that he banged a married woman? Yeah. You shouldn't do that kind of thing.
Also, he wasn't married at the time. So, I mean, yes, that is still bad, but he wasn't married.
Do I acknowledge that guys who are, do that occasionally? Yeah. Do I think it disqualifies him from running the Department of Defense and effectively advocating for the average soldier, average seaman, average Marine, average whatever they call Space Force people?
Somebody's going to giggle in the chat.
Because I said, yeah, that's, yeah.
Yeah.
What are they still, isn't that what they still call the...
I don't know. Ask Slender.
Yeah. Anyway, but no, I think you can see that the interests aligned against Hegseth are the Unipar. So yeah, Guardian is what they call Space Force. It's silly. Hegseth they are scared S-less because he is advocating for war fighters and a lethal military and not an agenda-based military.
Get rid of all DEI in the military.
Yeah. So that's why they were that, and they're going to try to use this against him hard. I hopefully think that Gaetz, and I think Trump basically made the call that, like, look, Gaetz was okay with doing this. We'll take care of him on the back end somewhere else because we got Bondi as a choice in our pocket. But I think Hegseth is one he's going to actually fight for, because Trump, when he was on the campaign, stump, talked more about how terrible the woke military was than almost any specific government agency. Yeah. So I think he really likes Hegseth's mind. Hegseth has written books about it. The war on warriors. he knows that, like, this is something Obama was great about. Obama never gave specific marching orders to the people he put in. He just knew from the people he put in that they would understand the job. He didn't have to send an email to Eric Holder to tell him to do these things. They didn't have to send emails to Lois Lerner to, try to keep conservative, nonprofits from getting authorization. They just
Right.
know what their job is.
They understand the assignment.
Hegseth is a guy where Trump is going to have to leave a paper trail about doing these things. He's going to do it. Because that's what he wants to do. And that's why I think they really hate the idea of Hegseth in there.
Yep.
So.
Well, we are kind of at that time, and I think we covered everything except for the Nancy Mace stuff. We could hit on it just real quick. The fight is because you cannot set precedent of letting this language be normalized in the government. So I respect her for putting up this fight about McBride going in. And yes, it's just the bathroom issue, but it's when you start ceding ground is when you get that slippery slope happening.
The only
and if
thing
you cede the ground in Congress, then that sets precedent for
the
everybody
only
else.
thing I think is funny about Nancy Mace doing it is because Nancy Mace, her first claim to fame and the thing that put her on the map in the 90s was being the first woman admitted to the Citadel.
Yep.
She fought.
Admitted or graduated from?
She admitted and graduated. She was the first woman graduate from the Citadel. But she had to go to court to fight she was part of the case to actually get in. So she was an advocate. Now maybe she's changed over time, but she still seems pretty proud of going to the Citadel. She did basically invade and destroy a male space. And now she's upset that a male is invading her space. Not that she's wrong, but she helped create, like we talked about with slippery slopes.
And Gosh, that's what we're saying. It's not the best wording. It's not just the bathroom issue. The issue is normalizing it.
Which is why I think Eric Myers, she's a terrible messenger, because because if she's the one giving the interview, people will be like, well, why is it different than you forcing your way into the Citadel? Well, that's different. I'm a woman, but that was a male space, and you said you had a right to be there.
But at least somebody is standing up. I mean, if she's the only one willing to stand up and shout it as a woman in Congress, then, I mean, it's got to be her. Somebody's got to do it. She may not be the best person to do it, but she's the one who is actually willing to stand up and put her name out there. So,
no, I'm proud that she's fighting the fight, and that she actually got Mike Johnson, because he got so shamed about it within a couple hours, to immediately go full support for.
Yeah.
But
he had to go back to the mic and clarify that we're done with this crap.
Which is
that's what this election was about. We are done with all of this crap.
Yep. So I just, I just don't like, they did it because I remember at the time, because Virginia has VMI, which was another private military academy where they kind of forced them to admit women. And then the Citadel, that was one of the, when we talk about dominoes, right? They targeted those institutions first, so that because it look, we just want to have women who can go to the college and do the same thing. And then they use it. Well, now that women are at the Citadel and they're going through these academies, don't you think they should be fighting in frontline combat? They're not in, they are related, right? Step one is invading that space to get all the way to the next thing. And then once they're doing that, although it is weird that they don't want to change selective service to include women yet.
Well, and the other thing is, as far as the Mace thing goes, there are gender neutral bathrooms in Congress. That's where this becomes the only argument is McBride just wants to be acknowledged and be told, yes, we're acknowledging you're a woman now. No. The answer is no.
Here's where my compromise is. If you are now sans parts, twig and berries, maybe, like go full on, really commit to the bit. If you're going to get rid of the twigs and berries, maybe then we'll do the paperwork to let you use the ladies' room. Because there's you're not really going to casually Brahma someone without your twigs and berries if you've gone to that committed. And here's the dirty little secret is in the old, like for this trans bathroom issue, in the old days, I can tell you from when I worked at the theater, there was a person who was trans. We all knew she was they, them, he, whatever, was trans. But they committed to doing it. They would wait till the bathroom was pretty much empty to go in, and they would go into the ladies' room. And we were like, okay, that's fine. We kept an eye on the room, when we saw it, but they would come out, and then nobody had a problem with it because nobody was making a big deal about actually invading the space. The people who were doing it at that time, like I can tell you, this person was trying to genuinely be a woman at that point. But they were respectful in the fact that I saw them. This person would wait until the bathroom was basically unoccupied to go in.
Right.
Because they weren't trying to be demonstrative. They weren't trying to be in your face. They weren't trying to make people uncomfortable. Too much now is that kind of thing. It's weird how stuff like that can go.
Yeah. And there is a large percentage, according to many studies now, that just say it's autogynephilia. So,
yeah, that's the problem I have. I think the sheer explosion in numbers, and what's even worse is that dude from Delaware is doing it purely because they went from, it's like Bane, like no one cared about me before I put on the mask. Right. You were an inconsequential white dude who had no real prospects of winning elections till you weren't a dude anymore. And then all of a sudden you're speaking at the DNC, you're running for Congress and winning in Delaware.
Yeah. Same thing as in the sports. You can't win as a dude, so you decide to go win as a chick. So
I know Brittany Griner, whatever
Leah
that
Thomas.
One's name. Leah Thomas. Like that's the thing too, because here's where if you're an adult male and you're so committed that you get, again, the twigs and berries removed, that's a different. What I've noticed is that consistently the ones like Leah Thomas and then, as we know from Riley Gaines, they're not doing that. They are, in fact,
right. It's pure autogynephilia.
Yeah, they are getting
aroused by dressing as a woman in front of other women
and making them have to have that in their space.
Acknowledge it. Yep.
Yeah. So that's, that's where it's interesting to me because for, it's like, where did this trans argument come from? It was because prior to like 2000, the trans community represented 0.00 whatever percent of the population. And the ones who were doing it were trying to genuinely just not draw attention to themselves at all.
Right. Well, I believe Gojira had said something about that. Genuine trans don't want to be noticed.
Correct. They want to blend in. They wouldn't, like, the absolute goal of a genuinely trans person is to blend in as whatever gender they're playing.
Blair White.
Yeah.
And Blair White doesn't even try to claim that Blair's a woman.
So,
but we're over time. We just wanted to touch on that because we want to try to hit on the major news stories of the week.
It is worth keeping track of. And I think that the Democratic majority, by the way, is not going to want to deal with this fight because
it's already been backed down. Johnson released it in the rules and it's not even legislation. It's literally just rules for this session of Congress. So it's in the rules at this point.
Well,
and
no,
even
what
McBride backed down on it.
Because AOC took pronouns out of her bio. I think they might want to pretend that the trans stuff didn't move the needle, but it did. Like the suburban moms.
It definitely did in the swing states.
Definitely are fed up with that. Because if they're especially mothers of boys, it's nope.
Yeah. We did get a Dollar from Deeple over on Rumble. Here's one for the road. Thanks for the show, Brahma and Little Chad. Hail chat, and let's all have a great Sunday. The Browns won on Thursday, so no drinking bleach for me today. Nice.
That's true. They beat the Steelers, man. Good job for them.
Yep. So what do you got coming up this week?
All right, we got our Tuesday night game stream. I think the proud return of Party Animals will continue.
Yep.
Getting good content from that show for Ascendant Arcade too, which is always nice. It's a double whammy. You can watch it live and support Brahma's channel with super chats or memberships, or you can see highlight reels as they get cut and edited by Slender Dad
over on Ascendant Arcade.
And then we've got our regular Friday night show at 9 p.m. Eastern, the Ascendant Art Podcast. We had a really cool show this last week. Nerd Cookies joined us, and we did some Dune Prophecy deep dive, and it was a pretty good conversation. If you go to that channel, the first hour is all Dune talk. And forgive me for being very black pilled about Kevin Herbert and now Kevin J. Anderson and Brian
Kevin J. Anderson.
Yeah, version of Dune. And but it's interesting. I like to think that I had a pretty good knowledge of that lore, and so we were able to go pretty deep. So you might enjoy that, especially as that show continues. We might touch base, and I don't see a lot of other people covering it, so it might be worth doing that.
That show being Dune Prophecy.
Dune Prophecy on
first
HBO
episode came out last
Max. Week. Yep, it's a prequel to the new Dune movies that they've done. So so that's and we're still gonna do our show again this Friday. So hopefully Brahma will be there, Slender Dad will be there, Mad may or may not be there, depending on how focused he was on gaming for the week.
Right.
And his ability
Matt will still be there this Friday.
You think it'll last?
Yeah.
Good. That'll be interesting.
He got the full order, I think so.
You think it'll last?
It'll last.
Mad can burn through full order.
Yeah, but Friday's not too far away, and he's got to save some for Thanksgiving and all that stuff. So
yeah, so that'll be good.
Shredder will keep him on task. Yeah. So
and last thing is, and I'm guest hosting, I guess, another week on Bourbon and Boarding with you Saturday next week.
Yep, Brian will still be gone. So we had an interesting show last night. At least Copied Kitty says that Little Chad should be a permanent member of that show. So I thought we had a pretty good night. We saw some big hits.
I think Copy might only be saying that because of my ability to focus and making fun of the Maple Leafs.
That's
possible. Which is, by the way, the right thing that every person on a hockey show should do.
Yeah, and make fun of Mike DiCarlo for liking the Maple Leafs. So yeah, I mean, I think you covered most of my shows too. So Monday, well, I might be on Culture tonight. I haven't heard whether we've got whether he's doing the show yet. So we'll see about that. So that's Culture Casino's channel. I did put the links for Ascendant Arcade and Ascendant Art in the chat. So please go sub to both of those channels. Help out Slender and Little Chad. Let's get them monetized as well. So Monday I will be on Comics Division's channel. Tuesday we've got the gaming stream. Wednesday I think I'm off this week. I don't think we're doing a Christian panel. We missed this last week because we waited too long to try to set up something, but I think we'll be reviewing Bonhoeffer next week. Thursday back on Comics channel, Friday over at Ascendant Art, Saturday Bourbon and Boarding on my channel, and then we're back here next Sunday morning. So I think that's everything. Hope everybody has a great Sunday, if it's Sunday where you're at, and yeah, we'll catch you on any of those other shows.
Yep, and check out Brahma's memberships if you want. Like this stream, share it out. Anything you can do to support the team is appreciated.
Yep, we would love the build up. So here is an intro for an outro. We will catch you all later. Yeah, we're cleared.